Donald Trump has attacked the European Union at Davos at the World Economic Forum. Oh my goodness, it was delicious. Hello everyone, this is Andre Walker. Thanks so much for watching this show. Please do subscribe, but more importantly, hit the bell notification icon. It's the best way to absolutely guarantee you get all my videos as soon as they are released. Well. Many of you will be a bit upset that Donald Trump turned up at the World Economic Forum, but I think it's quite an interesting thing, actually. It just shows you the way that our political leaders have constantly pretended that they are in hock to the World Economic Forum, where in fact, actually, it's probably the other way round. Business people around the world will do whatever it takes in order to make money. If that's coming up with stupid green energy policies, if that's making electric cars, even though they know they're bad for the environment, they will do that as long as political leaders take them in that direction. With that in mind, at Davos, they were actually relatively nice to Donald Trump. I mean, you could see some people in the audience who weren't clapping. He said that he was going to end the disaster that was taking place in the United States of America. He was going to end what happens on the border, this whole stupid situation where people are able to cross so quickly. And by the way, just a side bit, I don't know if you know, there was a news report today in the United Kingdom that 1 in 12 of the population of London are actually illegal migrants. That shows you the extent to which this invasion has taken place. And I think there is a global movement, probably not coordinated in any specific way, to ensure that Western countries die under the weight of illegal immigration, something that will destroy them completely. Anyway, Donald Trump stood up and he was asked about the European Union. Now, amazingly, the guy on stage was one of his neighbours in Mar-a-Lago, and he said that, in Florida, not Mar-a-Lago rather, but he said that what he was concerned about was EU regulations, that the reason the American economy had done so well was, compared to the EU, was that the EU had so many regulations on it. Now, remember, the United Kingdom is now even worse than the EU, because what we've done is kept the EU regulations and we're regulating on top as well. And so actually Britain will have a significant problem with that because, as I say, Keir Starmer is committed to taking all EU regulations and incorporating them lock, stock and barrel, plus bringing his own regulations in. So in theory, what should happen is the United States of America should do best financially, followed by the EU, and the UK will do worse. Of course, Brexit was all about leaving that cumbersome regulatory environment. Anyway, the story that Donald Trump told I thought was really interesting. He wasn't very specific, but he said there was an investment he wanted to make in the Republic of Ireland, presumably a golf course, but he didn't say that, so I don't want to put words into his mouth. But he said the Irish government gave him approval within a few weeks, and then they said that they wanted the EU to approve it as well, and the EU said it would take them 6 years to approve the development or the project, whatever it was. And he said it was a relatively simple thing to do, therefore he decided not to bother investing in the European Union. And I think that that is a major problem, isn't it? If you go back to the UK Brexit negotiations, at one point the EU wanted major trade tariffs in between the United Kingdom and the EU. And the reason they wanted that was as a punishment to countries for leaving the EU. To see the United Kingdom fail was important in order to hold the project together. But of course, what it also would have done was destroyed the German car industry, because I think it's something like 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 cars around the world, German cars around the world are in Britain. Now, of course, that doesn't bother the EU, does it? Because there's a disconnect now between business leaders and politicians, in the sense that politicians are not interested in making the economy work. Now, there are some big business that can get what they want, but the majority of business doesn't seem to get it. And that is the reality of the situation, that now we've got all this horrendous regulation in place. Well, I thought that that was a good step forward, because at least now Donald Trump is standing up for Europe as well. I think we'll resolve the issue with the UK, because what he'll do is he'll put tariffs on China, Mexico and Canada, because they're undercutting American jobs. But then I think we can get that free trade deal with the United States of America if only we sack David Lammy. But I can't see him surviving very long. But you know what I'm going to do? And I never do lists. I'm not BuzzFeed. But I'm going to give you a list of the executive orders that Donald Trump has already brought in, or at least a summary of them, because I think you're going to be very, very interested. Okay, revocation of 80 executive orders by Joe Biden. He's withdrawn from the Paris Climate Agreement. He's brought in a federal hiring freeze for everything except the military and certain other categories. There's a freeze on new regulation until everything is reviewed by the Trump administration. Brilliant idea. Directive to end the weaponization of political adversaries of previous administrations. Basically going to make it illegal for you to prosecute the administration that came before you in order to attempt to discredit them. Great move. He's withdrawn all of the hate crime legislation, all of these free speech attacks, all of this non-crime hate incidents or their equivalents have gone. Federal workers must return to full-time working in person. They can't work from home forever. A directive to federal agencies to address the cost of living crisis. I won't go into the full details. He's suspended the US refugee admissions program, so that stops people pretending to be refugees and getting into America. Unleashing American Energy, which calls for a review of energy activities which may hinder domestic energy development. Effectively, you are not allowed to put green energy above people's cost of living. You've got to make sure that people get their homes heated first and worry about green technology second. Brilliant idea. Creation of the Department for Government Efficiency, DOGE, which of course Elon Musk would head and has made a joke about it because then he wants to have Dogecoin or whatever it's called because of that. Executive order defining gender and rolling back transgender protections. So effectively there will be two genders and men will not be allowed into women's categories in sport. He suspended the ban on TikTok for 75 days to review its ownership. Then there's the renaming of Denali. Effectively, Mount McKinley has had its name changed to Denali because that's what the natives used to call it. Also, the Gulf of Mexico has been renamed to the Gulf of America. Well, as somebody who lives next to the English Channel, mind you, I live next to the Irish Sea as well. I don't know. We'll have to think about that. Whether people will take it on, I don't know. Directive on architectural style for federal buildings. He refuses to make them look ugly. Okay. Other significant policies and actions, initiation of plans for mass deportations, indication of intent to terminate birthright citizenship. That is to say, if your mum and dad border jump and you're born in the United States of America, you are still a border jumper, not an American citizen. Plans to impose tariffs on countries like China, Canada and Mexico I've come up with already. Ease regulations on fossil fuels. The thing that was put on by the Biden administration made it very difficult. He's revoked security clearance for some former intelligence officers. They're people we think who were involved in smearing him. I think it's really significant. And the other thing that he said at Davos was he was minded to force NATO countries to spend 5% of their GDP on the military. Now, as you know, the United Kingdom was a signatory to the 2%. And just to explain, that's not 2% fees for NATO. You can have a royal yacht. You can have a new presidential bunker. You can have soldiers on changing of the guard. All of that is covered as long as 2% is spent on your military. We didn't used to do it. And actually, it wasn't Donald Trump that forced us. The reason we went over 2% of GDP was the 2 new aircraft carriers. But I personally think we should be at 5% of GDP. When I look at the amount of waste brought in, I think that we should be protecting ourselves. And frankly, what Donald Trump has said is absolutely right. They're incredibly rich countries who are living off subsidies from the United States of America. Anyway, that is a summary of what Donald Trump has been up to and what he said at the World Economic Forum. It's all good stuff. And I think there's going to be something that'll be very interesting in political science. Modern government is incredibly complex. And I just think that what has happened here is that because Donald Trump has come into power for the second time, I think he's now understands how to do the job properly. I'm not decrying his first term, but he said that when he first came in, he had 16 people picked to be his new administration. He now has 3,500 people picked to be his new administration. And so I think that that is something that's significant. And obviously, he knew what he had to do. It's like anything, isn't it? It's like if you build a house. I don't know why I've given that example, but my dad did recently. And then at the end of it, you go, oh, I wish I'd done that differently. I wish I'd done that differently. Once you have experience, you build a second one, which he's not going to do. You're in a much better position. Okay, until next time, goodbye.